Dzień dobry. Nazywam się Joanna Leśnierowska i zapraszam Was do wysłuchania pierwszej rozmowy z cyklu Co nam zrobi taniec, realizowanego z Warszawskim Obserwatorium Kultury w oczekiwaniu na otwarcie pierwszej instytucji dla tańca w Warszawie. W ramach tego cyklu pytamy o to, co nam może dać, każdemu z osobna i całej naszej wspólnocie, regularne obcowanie z tańcem, jego doświadczanie i jego praktykowanie. Pochylamy się tutaj nad zagadnieniami sprawczości i odpowiedzialności choreografii. Pytamy o ich znaczenie w kontekście społecznym oraz jakie umiejętności i jaką wiedzę generują artyści choreografii i jak możemy się tą wiedzą dzielić. Takie spojrzenie na taniec i choreografię w ich pozaartystycznym spektrum pozwoli nam także rozpoznać powody, dzięki którym w ostatnich dekadach choreografia nieustannie zyskuje na znaczeniu. Dzisiejsza rozmowa jest zapisem mojego spotkania z Julie Phelps, Rivcą Rubin i Peterem Pleyerem, którzy obok Marty Kyle, która nie mogła być tym razem z nami, są współinicjatorami projektu Grand Reunion, który realizowany był przez Art Stations Foundation w Poznaniu podczas roku pandemii COVID-19. Impulsem do powstania tego projektu oraz jego paliwem napędowym stało się pytanie, czy choreografia może pomóc uleczyć świat. Spotkanie zostało nagrane w języku angielskim, a pełne archiwum projektu, bogate w bardzo wiele konkretnych prób odpowiedzi na to pytanie, znajdziecie pod adresem www.grandreunion.net. Gorąco zapraszamy. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy that we meet again after a little while. Tonight, we are meeting in the evening in Europe, and it's very morning in San Francisco. And that is also a big part of the project we would like to tell you about, span between two continents, and actually more than two continents, because the participants of the Grand Reunion we're going to talk about has been coming from many, many different directions and continents. We are gathering here to question what actually has been our major concern back in 2018-19 when we started to think about the project, and especially in 2020 when we executed it at the midst of the pandemic. Here today with me are Julie Phelps, artistic director of Counterpulse in San Francisco. Rivca Rubin, are you in Manchester now?
I am.
Directly from the UK, and Rivca is a founder of Upwarding and the coach for team development and a nonviolent communication trainer, and we have already in Poland several times an opportunity to witness also your knowledge and exercise with you, acquire new skills around communicating, being together, and building our climate. And Pleyer from Berlin, long-term friend of Poland and Polish dance, choreographer and teacher, pedagogue, lover of dance history, amazing improviser, and all together with Marta Kyle, that is missing here, we have been instigators of the Grand Reunion project that actually has started originally as an idea for 10 days performative conference to mark the ending of Old Brewery New Dance program that I had a pleasure and honor to develop and run for 17 years in Poznań within the frame of Art Stations Foundation. And as I already mentioned, the idea for our encounter then and now is a very important question: whether choreography can help to heal the world. We actually started to discuss this problem together preparing for the event that eventually did not happen and being confronted with a necessity to practice what we preach when the pause, a large pause of pandemic stopped life of everybody, kept us in isolation and made our live encounter impossible. We turned the project into an online gathering of 1 year with several different facets that I'm going to probably mention now. Now we felt that the crisis has been already there much longer that we want to admit, and that actually we do share a belief that choreography over generation has developed a lot of different strategies to help us to go through the crisis or multiple crises that seems we are at the moment never ending to experience. So I'm very happy that we can now be here together again. And I wanted to ask you now, today, from the perspective of this almost 5 years from Grand Reunion and in the light of everything that is happening around us, how do you feel? How would you answer this question? Can choreography help to heal the world? And if yes, how?
Well, I was reviewing the website in preparation from this, and it was shocking and discouraging in some ways to realize how much feels exactly the same. And that would, come to bear on our premise that choreographic practices can heal the world, or, we've also called it reducing harm, or develop communities, like other ways that it can be of use in times of crisis. But the other thing that feels real, like the chaos and crisis and the precipitation of the dominant world order has only the growth there has outpaced the growth in choreographic practices finding ways to subvert it or interrupt it. But of course, that's to be expected, and the battle takes a lifetime. But observing like on the ground in San Francisco, I think that there have been qualitative changes in community. Certainly in the group of artists that surround Counterpulse, like a deeper understanding of the intersection of art and activism, a deeper level of participating in social unrest, precipitated, we were coming out of the George Floyd and then the pandemic, and since we've had Palestine and all of these other things, and the political and participation and like savviness of the dance community in the Bay Area has grown. And I think as it relates to the other dimension of our gathering here today, which is this potential dance center in Warsaw, a big part of that is because, right in 2016, Counterpulse had the opportunity to develop a dance center in downtown San Francisco. And we are one of the few institutions in downtown San Francisco that made it through the pandemic. Even tech firms, Twitter, all of these people, our neighbors, like couldn't stand the chaos of their sector. And we thrived, and the communities of people who are connected to us because of that, guided by all of the values and practices that are laced through the website that, you can take time to spend. I can spend more time with these. That's the other thing I learned, is a part of that. It's a part of why there's that I was looking at the project statement and saying like things are fraying at the fabric of interspecies and interhuman relationships. Like the fabric has continued to fray, but like the dance community is still really strong and growing stronger and resilient and able to adapt and able to connect and able to collaborate. And that's still really potent.
Yeah, nice to hear, Julie. When I was thinking about the topic and the times we spent together, I was very much reminded of some of the headings that had brought us together. And I remember that part of what we wanted to do is focusing on somatic practices and on various practices of improvisation as two of the main like kind of roads traveling around this project. And I do think that many of the contributions on the website are examples of possibilities of being in the body, even though it is virtual, like breathing exercises of Eva Karczak, or chi exercises of Sarah Shelton Mann, or in all of the meetings we would do some kind of moving or shaking before we had encounters on the digital platforms. So to really connect with the physicality of the body and grounding and breathing and being in a sort of a reality that's still different from the virtual was one of the bigger aspects for me. And then in terms of improvisation and insisting in improvisation is and developing improvisation and making almost new vocabulary and how we talk about improvisation is kind of an ever-growing world for me, to insist in improvisation and then coming together in groups and not knowing where we will go as we move together or as we meet or as we talk, and really find ways to let something new emerge that wasn't there before is really one of the keys that keeps me involved in the dance world. And especially when you talk about the chaos and the complexities of the world, that I do think improvisational tools and how we listen to each other and how we sense to each other is a real helpful tool to face more complexity and not to limit this complexity to simple answers, but to stay complex and enjoy that complexity that we actually can hold together.
I can add to that. I was thinking before, when we make a reference to the website and all the enormous amount of things that are on there to enjoy, engage in, read, that it feels more like a platform, like a resource library. Actually, it feels like a resource library that's held online. It's definitely not a website. It's a place, in a way as the 12-month project became. It's a place that was held, but that's not what I wanted to go into. When I think of choreography, I keep going to improvisation as well, because often, not all the time, it is an element as people are making work. Even if there's an external choreographer, there is often that element. And for me, that part carries with it a curiosity and being in the moment, and therefore being, and I use the French word disponible, being available. And if you like, by its nature, a connecting or collaborating in action. I think those elements, for me, in terms of movement and also within choreography improvisation, are hugely crucial in also, I'm not sure about the healing the world, but in contributing to a world that I would love to live in, or would like future generations to be able to live in, that is mutually much more beneficial than the one that we are going into. I do want to remind us that actually, and I've just been listening recently to a few things, including Rutger Bregman. We have never come as far as now with DEI or EDI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or belonging, as it's more in England. And that would be really important not to forget. Now it's being undone, certainly in the States. There's a lot of undoing of it. But I think it's really worth remembering that it has never been better than where we got to, including during, and like you said, Julie, George Floyd was a big moment, but it's been in the making for several hundred years and a lot of work. So maybe I'll stop there for, oh yeah, and there was one other thing I wrote down, is one of the things I noticed in the Grand Reunion work, including the fact that COVID came, is that obstacles became opportunities. And I think that ability to work with is crucial in any problem or conflict situation, and especially now. And for me, what has been really important and continues to be is for us, any us's, to choose to want to learn how to connect with the not like-minded. And so there's one more thing. I have noticed an increase in the practice of communicating, I'll call it. It's clumsy yet so far, because when we think about it, who here, well, certainly not me in my lifetime, actually have grown up in community. There's been a huge amount of individualism that we're very practiced in. I think we use the word, we don't necessarily understand the same by the word depending on who's using it. There's many, many communities, but what actually is it? What are the ingredients? And the last word is, when I opened my notes, I found solidarity. Our notes of I think, one of our first meetings. Yeah.
I also just answering to those two big areas of choreographic practice and research that we actually indeed pointed out for ourselves as potentially the richest in strategies of how to be together, how to overcome crises. So somatic practices, plethora of somatic practices, and improvisation. I just wanted to also mention that to me, one of the most interesting discoveries within these discussions was really to realize that I do think about improvisation as a crisis management practice or possibility of crisis management tool. And I actually imagined, and I hope that in my lifespan I will experience that this fantasy about everybody practicing improvisation of any kind, be it dance, music, slam poetry, painting, any kind of improvisation on a daily basis in schools, maybe replacing a very oppressive physical education, at least oppressive in Poland, as I remember from my childhood. Because I do believe that learning to step together into the unknown and being able constructively to answer yes and transform this unknown or chaos or everything that comes to you in a form of an impulse from outside or from another person into something beautiful, into new, a positive answer, is something that would give all our societies a total different awareness, self-awareness, and really equipped us with the tools to go through the reality that is full of surprises, full of ongoing micro and macro crises. So it was for me very interesting to realize that in improvisation and insisting on sharing different strategies for improvisation, at stake there is really a future of generations, of the ways how we are going to go through the bad times together, hopefully still enjoying and being creative, and that actually that is also a big part of Grand Reunion achievement, is to welcome people into the choreography world, because we really insisted a lot within our work that the gathering is not for professionals only, but actually that it looks every possibility to open up towards other people in our community, but also outside of our community. And that said, we were looking for allies in the different areas of science, of different art forms, fields. We were inviting people to share with us their knowledge and their strategies, and show us different perspective on many different issues that we often feel are overwhelming, and that we might feel we miss agency in dealing with them. But also, we mentioned here already a lot the online presence of Grand Reunion. It's not only grandreunion.net, reservoir, archive, but actually really like a platform where you can really experience also different contributions of many artists. There could be more than 140 artists involved in this project in Grand Reunion. But also every month we were opening up our activities to the wide audiences, offering them workshops and lectures and talks, trying to really share the tools and share the thoughts and ideas we were often generating over generations in the safety of our dance studios, because I have a feeling that now that was the time, and is still now the time, to make them more accessible, to make people know about them, and help everybody to learn them with us, to practice together, to really self-empower ourselves with this knowledge that is not secret, that actually is so close to our bodies, and we really need it on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, and during this time, because we began in June of 2020 during the real lockdown, this focus on, I think, these internal practices in relationship to your body and how that builds your aptitude for adapting and making choices in macro or micro crises was such a focus. And of course, now here we are in 2025, and I feel my venue is now doing live events again. Many or most of us are going to in-person events again. And we have a kind of different challenge, right? Because the last 5 years have happened, and the kind of maybe one of the many interlacing crises that this project has looked at is like the digitization or virtualization of our lives and worlds and bodies. And so, I've been kind of going back to some of the most basic kind of tenets of dance and dance performance for me, which is like providing that impetus for people to come together in shared experience of live bodies, both themselves as a live body in a room with other people, and experiencing expression and experiencing like what it means to improvise in your spectatorship, right? It's not just the practice for the stage, but like, how do we hang out in the lobby afterwards? A kind of always really salient sort of kind of part of the project statement for me was to like find possible respectful interactions with other bodies. That's one of the things that somatic practices give us, right? And it just feels really important for dance to have space. Like, it was an incredible opportunity to platform dance and dance practices in this kind of archive way through the website. And now those practices, and as they're continuing to grow and shape in these spaces. And what that does as a kind of social sculpture in a city, in a community, whatever that may be, is just a kind of vibrant area of exploring what we need to do on the interpersonal level to interact with people who we may not have the precise shared opinion with. Like, we may just have to interact with, we're talking the basics sometimes. I feel like we've been brought back to zero socially in so many ways. It's just like, just even talking to a stranger, like, how are you going to do it, and having an opportunity to find those answers for yourself. And, like I said, it's like, it's no wonder for me that, counterpoles and the counterpoles community that exists around us, many of whom are, operating in through all of these different complex lens of dance and somatic and improvisation, but also dance capacity to bring in collaborators, right? Dance is a very collaborative, interdisciplinary art form, I would say, uniquely in that it requires teams, like technical dimensions. And but that sort of resilience of the counterpulse community from 2020 to 2025, even just in that snapshot, is like the chance to document and create practices through shared ideas, but also then to have a space to come together and do it, like actually do it. Like, I don't know how audiences are doing where you guys are from, but like it hasn't like went back to normal. People aren't coming out as much, like maybe we all discovered that streaming TV is easier at home for your cultural participation. But as we kind of continue to rebuild, as we continue to like activate these practices that have always been the backbone of our sector, our dance and choreographic sector, we begin to see that it's relevant yet again. The like willpower that what we're doing is exactly what's needed is like renewed. Like we come together, we create space, we model interdisciplinary projects as a way of having a pluralistic society. It's like it's happening and it needs to keep happening and it needs a space to do it in. And so I'm really hopeful that the Warsaw project will happen, because also being from the West Coast, like out here, it's often you feel literally on the edge of the world. And one thing that Project Reunion did, I mean, it was already happening, but is building these sort of practice-based connections with people instead of geographic ones, right? And to have these centers where these shared values around dance and choreography and improvisation are being like kind of like held and stewed, then creates a kind of network where both on the individual level, but also institutions and governments and cultural embassies can like work together to create intercultural understanding. It's like, it is the same as improvising across discipline as it is to like collaborate across cultures. And like, that's the really like powerful, like juicy spectrum that Project Reunion is operating on. And then like a dance studio and like what happens in the like just continued cultivation of all of those things together.
And then at the same time, how that events and how that meetings and how that coming together in these spaces can actually resonate out into other sectors as well, because I think this is even similar important to understand that, yes, Grand Reunion and we were researching and discovering and sharing and listening to each other about concepts or ideas that can help heal the world. But we're not alone. There's many other people in other sectors, in universities or in other communities, in agriculture. I don't know, there's so many organizations, grassroots, who really want to make it different and who really want to foster change in away from the individualist capitalist system that we're part of. That I think it is worth to articulate and reach out and shine and even like vibrate outways to other organizations, other people, other connectors that really are there. That it's not a solely dance, choreography, improvisation that can do this, but there's many more, and I'm sure there's many more in Warsaw, in the cultures of even neuroscience or whatever is like allied with what we're doing.
I really I perked up when you were talking about what happens after a performance, the engagement, and how important that is. Or when I noticed that is not happening. So here, some venues, or I'm thinking of one in particular, during COVID, obviously was closed. Then it reopened, but it didn't reopen the bar. And that means when we go, we are really noticing, wow. So at the end, you see something, dance, theatre, whatever, and then you go home. There is actually no one to speak with. That really isn't working at all. And And then at the same time, I'm thinking when there's a festival on in the place, in the city, there are lots of different venues. And actually little communities form because you meet people again. You might have seen a show. So it was something I think you said earlier, Joanna, and it just got me thinking how important that infrastructure, now how useful that infrastructure could become now to curate real connections throughout the year between different venues that offer spaces for different things under the same umbrella. I think it requires or would want a generosity that I felt was there in Grand Reunion massively. There was so much generosity, so much passion, and a lot of goodwill. And again, that might be something to re-practice because there's so much busy and people are requiring to earn a living, which is much harder than it was. That is definitely harder than it was when I sort of experienced it some other times in this country. So there's less time, becomes bitty. Then there's a whole digital, people are scared often to speak to one another. Mm-hmm. And require more support around the possibility of engaging and maybe without words, just being in spaces. So there's a lot more going on. We know a lot more, or there's a lot more knowledge around how to curate spaces. Mm-hmm. So I think the after is part of, because that is where the connection can happen. I mean, I live in the north of England, where luckily there is a real tradition of just talking to anyone, anywhere. And I'm so glad I'm here because you can talk to anyone at any time on the bus stop, in the middle of, in the pause, in the break, in the whatever. Really helps. That isn't what I find when I go to other countries. I think it wants to be really nurtured. You know, I see people come in their groups and stay in their groups. So I'm liking what you were saying before, Julie. I think that, and I've also noticed there is more awareness of body and being in body. There is, you know, wellness, well-being, the agenda of organizations. I think organizations have it on the agenda, haven't quite managed yet to turn it into actually places where well-being happens. There'll be a few, you know, no doubt. But I think there's a lot of work that can be done when, again, this is now taken as an opportunity. So going to the Warsaw Dance venue, what an opportunity there is to connect and co-create something from a position of generosity. You know, the dancers, the choreographers who involve also the organizations and institutions. Yeah.
I actually like a lot this idea, obstacles to opportunities, that you mentioned, Rivka, because indeed, I mean, we first practiced this being shocked by the pandemic, ruining our original plan, and knowing that any of the easy solutions our colleagues were practicing, like postponing the event for a undefined future or doing one-time event online, that none of those was either possible or of our interest within Grand Reunion, because we really wanted to design a place where we could be physically together in an extensive span of time, with no obsession on exchanging products, but rather sharing practices and practicing the art of being together. So I found we made a really a big job of defining this still online but extended in time 1 year online gathering of thinkers, artists, audiences together that really helped me, and I know help also many other of us and our audiences to go through pandemic, because it provided sustainability also of people who care for each other and know that always at the same time, once a month, there is a group of people gathering, sharing support and exchanging knowledge. But also, I have a feeling that the pandemic time has proven that that actually choreographic field is one of the most quickly reacting to obstacles as a creative opportunity, because the amount of new forms that kind of suddenly started to appear all over. Choreographies on the Zoom with the new digital tools, like an incredible amount of incredible podcasts that were providing not only knowledge but actually a new forms of dancing through our ears and listening to materials. That was actually incredible, and we actually profited from it a lot, wanting that artists are engaged on every level of our project and inviting them to co-curate every month's contents, but also to respond with the new forms of materials to the ideas and topics that we've been busy with. And I found it an extremely interesting and enriching experience, because that also showed that choreography is not bounded only to physical space, but in every limitations of the space, it also can still thrive in the expanded field. Yeah, it can always provide a certain experiences and move our minds and ideas and imaginations and bodies and lead us into a dance, which actually is again speaking about the place that hopefully will soon be opened in Warsaw. It will not, we already know it, fulfill all the expectation and needs of the community, but it will be a very beautiful anchor that will help the spring of creativity, both of artists but also audiences, just continue ongoingly. And I think that in this regard, in our incredibly rich catalog of contributions, I have a super soft spot for all the materials that are dealing with the art of listening, because that actually a practice of deep listening and listening to understand. This is also actually the way to achieve what you, Rivka, were mentioning, that we really wanna know how to encounter, meet, and be together in space with people who don't think the same as we do. And the way to do it is to listen, to learn to listen in a new way. And there is plenty of materials by artists who are investigating listening and choreographing listening consciously, and we have now opportunity to still practice with them. So for me, that was the most one of the most interesting parts of our proposals that now you can still find on grandreunion.net. What was relevant and exciting and maybe a discovery for you guys?
I'll just chime in to say alternative ways of writing. So the project statement being rewritten each month by different people, there was an observation for just what it is to translate the experiences of our body in our daily lives through language, to then talk about dance. And so there was just this way that you could kind of trace just different types of translation, not to mention that many of the people who rewrote the project statement were not English speakers as their first tongue, or from different, like from Brazil versus Poland versus the United States, just different environments. And then at the time that all these translations were happening through was also changing quickly. So like June of 2020, is really different than July of 2020, because all of the different conditions around our lockdown and the knowledge that we had about the virus and everything were all still quite emerging. And so the project statement, and it's like many different shapes and forms, but this kind of premise of rewriting, right? Like layering and writing. And even if you write by creating a short dance video, or you write by creating a collage, the different takes all the different artists took on this, we've talked about it as a palimpsest, right? So it becomes this kind of layered text that it's almost less important to read each, especially now that it's so far in the past, like to read each and get, to try and dissect its exact moment is less relevant than to see this kind of choreography that emerged out of rewriting it, and how that created different types of understandings around what was going on for different people and in different places and in different socio-political environments. And just, dance and writing have actually always had this, in my opinion, really incredible relationship. dance artists are also very often theoretical and conceptual artists as well. And the writing that they do about the concepts that inform their piece, the research that they do into different, wings of academia to kind of create these responses and performances, has always just been, I think, a really rich part of our field. And the project statement really kind of highlighted that, but also just questioned, like, what is writing as it relates to dance? What is writing as it relates to coherence? What is it to create different forms of writing so we can maybe achieve different types of meaning, right? And that alongside of like the kind of failure of the American press and like no one really critically writing about dance, and that dimension of our field changing and then, essentially like completely then vanishing during the pandemic, it's something that I just found very, really like engaging throughout the process, but it's also just like leaving traces in what I feel like the work is right now, which is to both create and have the experiences that, whether it's dance in a theater, in your own home or whatever, but also how to take those experiences and create kind of interaction with the world around you, that creates the meaning that you want to be in, that creates the world you want to live in, that creates the world you want your future generations to live in. And yeah, so it feels like, like, where can we take writing? Where can we take writing with people? Where can we take language, like, become these byproducts of dance practice and point to its ability to kind of like flex through different kind of like expressions as well as different like areas of influence. So it's kind of a theoretical approach that I've been left with, to inform like the process of doing. You're focusing on the body, but that focus is actually just what it's opening up in terms of the world building that's possible. Whether that's a city, like very practically, or a kind of way of thinking, an intellectual community.
Thinking of any particular specific thing. I don't feel I want to pick something out. I didn't experience everything. I experienced quite a bit of it. And I'm going, yeah, and. So, and I realized what it is. For me, the whole experience was one. With a number of elements in it that was so very, very different and varied and surprising and inspiring and very interactive. I don't think I've interacted with people in so many different ways through this medium here. And then the little, when things were a little bit looser, some things was that we could deliver something by bike to somebody else, not touching. It was just very inventive. There was a lot of fun and humor as well throughout, but it is a whole thing. So I think each element is part of a greater bit. And I learned a huge amount. I think what an incredible learning platform. And again, I keep going back to generosity, because it also felt that it wasn't just us five and then whoever came to work with us in their different like layers of regularity. It felt to me that when people entered the space, and because of the energy that was, it bred that sharing and generosity. And maybe that is also something that is part of movement and dance anyway. So kind of back to the how can dance, movement, improvisation contribute together with lots of other things to make the world a place, ... Yeah.
I would come back to also something that Julie said about the writing. One of the few things that kind of really scared me and was really wonderful to have that sort of pressure to actually be invited, asked, or expected to write an editorial for the issue that I was curating, the two issues I was curating. And it took me a really, really long time before I really find the kind of courage to just sit down and write what I was really experiencing, thinking, wanting to express with the five of us, but also with the community in general. So this articulation of what it actually is and writing it down and publishing it, with the pressure of publishing it and sharing it, it was a real push, and it helped me to that's what I keep from that process, that I do understand sometimes it's good to sit down and really articulate and put down what it is that you really want to put forward. So on that, and I do have a few highlights that when I saw that for the first time, I was so inspired. The video of Andrea Keitz, a Berlin video artist, who posts a video that's called "Invitation to Play." And at first I was a little bit like, oh, it's a 5-minute video, and am I going to watch it? And then it is not a video. It is really what it says, an invitation to play. And it was just an opening for me how different formats can actually take on a life of itself in a different reality. So this for me is one of the highlights that surprised me very much. And then something to Rivka when she says, where do we actually have the possibility to train community, or to train how it is to be in community, that I do think I am really very much busy with the research of these group improvisation scores that have been articulated in the past, but then how can they be developed in the future? And one of the things on the grand reunion that I come back to, and this is the one thing that I also give to my students, is the link to the score of the slow motion rave that I put in there. That really is a score that you can read through, and there's even the music to it, so you can actually practice that score in with a group of people. And I do think within that reality of the articulation of these group scores and what they can mean to each other, to us in the future, that's still a big step to do also.
I also enjoyed a lot when we were creative, also as curators of moderators of particular months, finding new ways of being together and experiencing time together. So I will never forget the 24 hours event at the hotel that Rivka has proposed for one of our encounters. And I don't know, it was quite acrobatic, and I have no idea if we really believe it will work, but it did work, and it was an amazing event. And I had a great pleasure to sit in the lobby of the Tender Hotel on my duty, and welcome everybody in and distribute them among different rooms, to different things that were happening parallel. And the most touching part of Tender Hotel was watching sunrises together for 24 hours, because we managed to really have our grand reunion messengers with cameras in all of the different parts of the world, and consecutively watch how the sun was rising in different places in the world. That was pretty magical. It needed no words, and I really think it was a very special moment. I also love the idea, Peter, you had with the threesome talks. I think it's a January issue of Grand Reunion magazine. And this is also a very beautiful idea, how you can also let go of your curatorial power and just put the machine of thinking together in motion, because it was almost like a kind of a relay, like like passing the baton from one group of artists to another group of artists to discuss whatever they found relevant to discuss. So correct me if I'm wrong, it was all in all 21 artists involved in those series of talks, bringing people who knew each other before, and also those artists that have never knew each other, never spoke to each other before. So providing this space of encounter and us to witness these encounters was extremely inspiring to me. So I really loved that. I must also say that I have this amazing experience of working with a visual artist, with Patrick Lichota, on 2 VR galleries, because also like investigating the technology that was at hand, and we really wanted to create a space where you can enter and navigate yourself and discover for yourself, again, a great number of contribution of different forms from many artists. And in this regard, especially Soma Park, which was all really bringing to focus the somatic experiences, and offers a lot of meditation and exercises for our organs and for different aspects of our bodily experiencing the world. That was actually for me extremely enriching experience, and also a lot of fun, because I do believe that what dance and choreography offers us is also that an incredible amount of joy that we miss on a daily basis, especially when hard times are around us. I think that that's a great value of dance practice, that it not only brings us together, but it also helps us to enjoy time together and our relationships, and equips us with certain power, energy, and optimism to continue to keep on.
I noticed that all the way through there was an incredible level of trust afforded by everyone to everyone that I'd experienced. I don't remember ever anyone doing some kind of let me just check what you're proposing to see if it's good enough. So, and that unfortunately is still very present. There is still the idea of a hierarchy that somebody knows and therefore will, the panels that make the decision. We didn't have that. So the trust afforded the inventive, I think. There was a lot of care and support instead. I do have one moment, and that's a very personal moment, which I felt was there were invitations and provocations, and I mean that in the nicest way, the provocations. And that was one, Julie, you Encounter Phelps did, where we turned up, and I can't remember, the artist, the group's name, and the introduction was in sign language. And to my shock and horror, I immediately went to an assumption something's not working with the tech, because I couldn't hear them and there was no transcript. And then came, after a short period of time, minute and a half or whatever, welcome to our world. That was a very, 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 very important moment. So I'm also really glad that there was so much of that in the Grand Reunion that challenged or brought to light, let's say, assumptions, unnoticed presumptions. And of course, there was a lot more going on than that. But yeah, that was done again.
But I have a feeling that we have a tendency to talk about Grand Reunion that it was. And I want to believe that it is, because it does brings us together. It keeps bringing us together. We are the best example being here talking about it. And so we did not only meet in the 2020, we also already twice made a sharing of Grand Reunion ideas and content in Co-Festival in Ljubljana and in San Francisco Counterpoles. And I still hope that this will happen more and more. and that we are not only able now to access still the content and archive of the project and still exercise together with artists that left on grandreunion.net all the materials to read, to listen to practice together, but that also maybe soon we're gonna meet us, who knows, in Warsaw, and we'll have an opportunity again to question what choreography is, what is its agency, what is its responsibility also towards community, and how we are able to build together the world, at least a micro world in this place, the way we all wanted to be together and be with each other. And Julie, you said on the beginning that in 2016 you did open a dance space in a very difficult place in San Francisco. So could you just, for the last moment of our talk, share with us some experiences and strategies you applied to make this space home where it is now, and how did you reach out to the community and citizens and made them come to you and meet and continuously meet artists in Counterpulse?
Well, the only short answer to that would be many, many different ways, which I think today our talk has revealed is one of the core strategies of choreographic practices, is its multifaceted nature. We draw on somatics, improvisation, interdisciplinary connections, partnerships, mutual benefit, like, body-based creativity and expression, also intellectual or even academic kind of forms. And Counterpulse is definitely like that, very composite of all of these different strong suits of dance, kind of either magnified or escalated into the scale of a building. So, building a lot of partnerships with people who aren't in your sector, like foundations, yes, who give money and support, and government agencies that do that, but also like the business community, interacting with your neighborhood based on the geography, not just sort of, other arts organizations, and just constantly like using the kind of strong suit, the joy really of dance, to kind of bring all of the threads together that need to be brought together for a space, any space really, but certainly a space in downtown San Francisco during the pandemic to thrive, right? I think that Counterpulse is a dance object in a way. It improvises, and it's adaptable, and it's nimble, and it is able to make use of that which there is, and not just make use of it. I think maybe there's no function or utility even necessarily always at the heart of what the goal is. It's to actually come together and center joy and center the body and dancing. So that's a kind of high level way of looking at it. Of course, the actual mechanisms are different in the States than they would be in a European context, but basically leveraging the story of how dance communities can thrive and evolve over time to attract investment and support from the city of San Francisco, from the state of California, from private foundations, from, artists and audience members who want a place where they feel like they can express themselves, they can help co-create the vision, they can participate in the space, right? It's not just there for consuming or attending. These are the kind of alchemical ingredients that went into Counterpulse being able to attract the support that we needed, because we had that living, breathing example of like that answer. What is community? You could point to Counterpulse and you could say, well, obviously community is a chimera. It takes many different forms, but Counterpulse is one of them. And that the vital and urgent importance of having community spaces, it's a story that tells itself. And that's how it felt to lead Counterpulse through it, is that just telling the story of what we were doing, what we cared about and why, like just gathering, it just sort of like a snowball, just gathered people, like-minded people in all sorts of different sectors and walks of life, and just created this sort of like, yeah, just a sort of movement. And I think that dance has a really, really unique ability to do that. I think arts has a very unique ability to do that. And Counterpulse is just an example, right? It's going to take a different shape in all the different places it may find itself. But that's why the practices are important. And that's why that's relevant in what we're talking about today, is it's the practices that go into dance that create many different outcomes out of many different ingredients. And space and a space to hold community is a very particular effort and labor of love when it comes to dance, because the space is a collaborator in dance, both in terms of studio practice and, you know, embodying that care in space and creating the spaces that it's safe to dance, but also providing the spaces and containers that are really intended. They are designed in their purpose to bring people together to share experiences and share ideas and share glasses of wine and stand around a lobby and also watch a show. So, you know, it's been an incredible opportunity. And honestly, it really has been a remarkable finding to be here now in 2025 and look at the kind of roller coaster that downtown San Francisco has been on, and how Counterpulse has just been this stable, but also stabilizing like dimension in the like heart of our city, you know? And I don't think I think people wanted to believe it in 2016 when they were giving us state money to open a center for experimental dance. You know, this isn't concert dance even, you know? And to now just be on the other side of it, and everyone's like, wow, that really worked, actually. And it's actually one of the only things that worked in downtown. So, you know, what's going on in Poland is just totally different. But at the same time, that's the thing. It doesn't matter. It's the ability to deal with that difference that is the reason to place an arts organization in the center of a changing town.
Wow. I hope we can move together in Warsaw soon then. Thank you very much for gathering again and sharing the insights from our grand reunion journey that I still believe is not at its end. It's just another chapter. And thank you very much. And I hope that we can keep sustaining and keep supporting each other through all the times that coming, and that soon we will see us live in Warsaw, I hope.
Yes, in Warsaw.
Thank you
in
very much.
Warsaw. Yeah. Thank you.